Welcome to ALC Chats, a podcast series developed and produced by the Ageless Living Collaborative. I'm Phoebe Stein, president of Olive Presents and co-founder of the Ageless Living Collaborative. Ageless Living Collaborative is dedicated to optimizing the lives of seniors and giving them the information and tools to live their best lives. The mission of ALC is to listen, educate, inspire, and influence positive change for seniors and those who support the aging community. ALC Chats is another platform to reach those interested in supporting seniors, be it in senior living or aging in place. ALC Chats comes to you as a podcast and in some cases a vodcast. You can find ALC content on our website, www.agelesslivingcollaborative.org, or by following us on social media channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and on our own YouTube channel. Whichever place you follow us, we're happy you've chosen to join us. And now, we welcome our featured guest. Hello, I'm Phoebe Stein, president of Olive Presents and co-founder of Ageless Living Collaborative. And you are coming in on our very first podcast. We have recently launched a podcast series, and today we're going to be discussing the ever important topic of lighting for seniors. Our guest today is Lisa Warnock. Lisa is president and founder of Glow Interiors and is a member of the ALC. Lisa, welcome.
Thanks, Phoebe. I'm so excited to be here.
We, I think, need to tell everybody to make sure to turn their cameras on too, because we are vodcasting, and that means everybody who is listening can also look at the amazing slides that you've put together for this particular presentation. So I strongly urge anybody who is tuned in to definitely turn on their camera because you don't want to miss this. So tell me, Lisa, why is lighting for seniors more important than, say, lighting for everybody? You know, what about lighting for seniors needs special attention?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We could talk about this all day long, but there's a number of reasons why I personally feel that this is something we really should be talking about a lot. There's a lot of people that come into the space because they're really excited and interested to learn about designing for seniors, and they adopt a lot of practices from other market sectors that just don't really work as well in this market sector. And those reasons are primarily around safety and independence, because I think it's one of the core missions of Ageless Living Collaborative as well, is that we just want to make sure that the residents that we're designing for are living their very best life. And if somebody is feeling a little bit unsafe or not able to see properly, then I don't think they're really living their best life, right? So
I agree. And I want to make sure that everybody knows this is not just seniors living in community. This is seniors aging in place in their own homes,
100%, yeah.
Whatever configuration that is, whether it's a high rise or a ranch style house or a townhouse. These lighting elements and tips all apply whether you're at home or in a senior living community.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I 100% agree. I like to think of everywhere as needing to be designed for senior living, because there's going to just be so many older adults living in multifamily and working and kind of moving through all of the spaces that we're designing. So I honestly think these are really good practices to enable a large majority of people to feel safe and well designed for.
Agree. Well, let's talk about it. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So, just kind of a bummer, but let's just highlight a couple of the facts about, the reality is that older adults have really high fall statistics. And when those falls occur, they have really high incidence of hip fractures. And also those hip fractures can lead to deaths really, really early and really easily. And so don't love to dwell on that for very long, but it really is an important thing to consider is that when we're not creating enough lighting for people to travel through a place safely, that will lead to increases in falls. And so that's something we do not want to do. We want to make sure we are designing for safety.
Sure. Well, I think that really is important for seniors, but it's important for everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody who's trying to navigate their hallways at night and they don't have them properly lit, or they don't have sensor lighting that comes on as they start walking, is probably missing the boat.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, there's also, we talked about safety a little bit. When we're talking about communities, senior living communities, there's a great argument to be made for increasing staff retention by having great lighting. Energy efficiency and reduce operating cost is an important consideration. We're going to highlight this a little bit later in our conversation. We're going to talk about technology, but with the incorporation of some types of technology, we've been able to show a reduced need for certain types of medications, such as psychotropic medications and sleeping meds and all of that. We have also been able to prove that night shift workers are at a higher increased risk for breast cancers. Lots of cancers, actually, but breast cancer being the highest incident. And so, lighting can actually solve for that. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Well, and lighting also affects those who are affected by seasonal affective disorders.
Yep.
And so if we've got it light and bright, it seems like it's a good bet for everybody.
Yeah, great point. 100%. So I know this is another kind of bummer, but all of our lenses age, the lenses of our eyes. So you can see when you're 10, you've got this lovely, shiny, smooth eye lens. And
I want that one.
I know, right? Don't we all? And then as we age, the lens thickens and yellows and hardens. And so it's almost like you've got a callus on your lens, right? A thick callus. And so I think this is a good visual to understand why we need more light as we age. It's because that light needs to get through that thick yellow callus, essentially, that's on the top of our eyes before we actually get usable light. So I want everybody to remember this image when you're thinking about ramping up your light levels for designing for people with low vision and older eyes. It just takes a lot more light to get through.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Another visual here to consider is just like, well, what does that look like to be walking around with a yellowed lens? Yeah, it affects the visuals of the finishes. It affects the visuals of just trying to travel through, like, say, this corridor. If you have low vision and you're a little disoriented, you can barely see that handrail, right? Because the handrail is beige and it's just kind of it's blending right in. It's not a very high contrast to that wall. So I'm going to say the word contrast probably 1,000 times today because contrast is so important in both designing and lighting for seniors. And there's good ways to provide contrast, and also there's bad ways to provide contrast. So keep this visual in mind while we talk about contrast as well.
When I look at this picture with the clearly yellow right side of the frame, I'm reminded of stories that I'm told by designers who will have younger, newer designers wear a pair of yellow glasses so they can really understand why this is so important. Yeah. And maybe that's not just for designers. Maybe that's for folks who are, maybe the adult children of people aging in place, for them to also think about that's the way that you can really understand what they're seeing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think every design studio needs to have a set of those little plastic glasses that you can put on to check your finishes and see how does this hold up to the yellow lens test. That's probably the most common because, as mentioned, everybody's eyes yellow as we age, but then there's also a lot of eye diseases that can take place in a lot of people. And those eye diseases are represented in those sets of glasses as well. So yeah, you can check your patterns to see how disorienting are they for somebody maybe with macular degeneration. And also, guess what? Yellowing as well. So yeah, those are a hugely helpful tool, but I agree. I think it would be great for everybody to have them.
Yeah,
if possible. Right. Yeah. glasses for everyone. So we talked a little bit about the more light. So the reality is that less light is received by the retina, which is that processing center here that helps us with so much of our functionality. A problem with discriminating color, which can be dangerous sometimes in certain instances. Declining visual acuity. You need more light to see ink on a paper, to read, to do your tasks if you've got that aging eye. And then when you have your problems with mobility and just daily living, that's when you have a loss of independence and potentially a risk of falling and injury. So we want to avoid that.
Absolutely. The whole goal is to have people aging with the optimum care and experience so that they are ageless, right? We don't want people to wind up falling because of the light not being correct. And then, as you said, have hip issues. And, the whole point of Ageless Living Collaborative is to optimize living as a senior, So,
Yep.
Light seems like such an easy thing to fix.
Right. So that's why I'm so happy to help spread the word about it today.
Perfect.
Another really important thing, and this is where contrast comes in as a negative, is adaptation from light to dark and from dark to light. And what a lot of people don't realize is that as our eyes age, it just takes a lot longer to go from a dark space to a light and a light to dark. And literally a person can experience blindness during that adaptation period. So that's why it's really important for us to have very even illumination from room to room and space to space as well. Because the last thing you want to do is have a resident walking from, a parking lot at nighttime into a super bright lobby. And then literally you'll see somebody every once in a while kind of reaching around like to look for something to grab onto because they're plunged into darkness when that happens. And it's very frightening. And also, vice versa, you've got a beautiful, bright, sunny day and you're outside and then you walk into a very low lit space. And again, darkness, you just have to hold on to something. You just wait for your eyes to catch up, right?
I don't even think that that's only relegated to seniors. I think that's pretty much all of us. I have walked from light to dark and dark to light and had to stand a second and kind of get my bearings first sight. And I don't think that's unusual. I think that's, everybody but a child.
Yeah. I mean, our eyes are just way more, resilient and adaptable when we're younger. The first thing I really notice is when I'm driving at night, if I'm looking at something close in on my dashboard and then I look at something far away, on the road, it takes me a minute to adapt back and forth between that. And that's my first thing I've noticed as my eyes age a bit is that I kind of need to keep fixed on one point or the other, or I'm having some accommodation time as my eyes adapt. It's not fun.
Or get some anti-glare glasses for nighttime.
I know, right? You can see my glare today. I need better anti-glare glasses.
Exactly.
I need these readers to be able to do what I'm doing. Glare. So glare is another bad word in designing for people with low vision and with older eyes. Our eyes become way more sensitive to glare. Glare that when we're kids and we're running around without our sunglasses on, we can kind of handle it. It's maybe not comfortable, but it's not blinding. It's not disorienting. It's not disabling. Glare can be disabling when it's directly glaring into your eyes when you're older. And so, we created this little visual here to understand, what the different types of glare are, because direct glare is very disorienting. Indirect glare, which happens between about, 45 and 90 degrees, that's actually not too bad. We can handle indirect glare. And when a light source is directly overhead, that's great. We're not getting a glare from that as long as we're not also getting a reflection for that glare to bounce off of, like a white desk. If you're sitting directly under a light source and you're working on a white desk, you're going to experience glare and eye fatigue looking down at your desk. So you also have to think about that. What is your light source bouncing off of and reflecting off of? Does that then create a direct glare source again?
They should label white desks with a notice, a hang tag that says could create glare if not lit properly.
I know. Really?
So I've experienced that.
Totally. And it makes your eyes tired, right? Like it just makes it's very fatiguing. Yeah. So I told you all the things to avoid. Let's kind of dive in a little bit to some pro tips.
What can we do?
Yeah, exactly. Enough of the bummer stuff. Let's talk about the helpful info now. Yeah.
Okay.
So the biggest pro tip I can suggest is that if you are interested in the subject matter, if you are designing, and certainly if you're designing for older adults as a specialty, you really need to invest in this resource because this is exactly what this is made for. This is the how-to guide. So the IESNA, which is the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, has
Thank
been
you for
around.
Explaining that.
Totally. They've been around for a very long time, and they've been working really diligently to provide lighting guidelines and books for how to design for all kinds of different environments. And they've got one specifically designed for people with low vision and for seniors, and it's called RP28. And there's been multiple versions of it. We're currently on the 18 version. And what this guideline does is it provides how-to. It tells you how to provide the best amounts of illumination, how to maximize day lighting. They're even talking about lighting for health, i.e. circadian lighting or tunable lighting, which we're going to talk about. And then even controls. So this is going to give you everything you need to know to design well. There are these really handy dandy charts.
I just want everybody to know that we're going to go ahead and post the cover of the document that you just saw on our website, www.agelesslivingcollaborative.org. And you'll be able to order yourself a copy if you are designing for seniors either at home or in community. So this valuable tool, we will remind you what it is actually called and how to access it if you go to our website.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me about that. I forgot we were doing that. It's a great hack because it will just take you straight to there and you can download it. You can either get a printed or a downloadable version of this. But it literally will give you area by area the recommended amount of ambient light and where applicable task lights for the area and also and the tasks being performed. So you can see one of the things I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but one thing that they've done in the most recent version is to really address that daytime lobby and nighttime lobby experience of that adaptation process we were talking about. So 100 foot candles or 1,000 lux of ambient light is what they're suggesting for interior entries, right? As you walk into a vestibule. And that's a lot of light. It is. It's not easy to provide that much light right at the front door. But it also needs to be adjustable because they want that light to be down to 10 foot candles at night if you're coming to that same lobby, say from outside or from a parking garage. So yeah, really helpful tools here.
So how helpful is a dimmer switch in that case?
Well, a dimmer switch is great in a lot of applications. If we're talking about a senior living community where you've got really busy staff and you've got people of all ages running the community, it's really best to have all of this controlled by a low voltage control system, which has been pre-programmed. That takes the people factor out of, I can see fine, right? Maybe you've got a 25-year-old person on the floor. They're not noticing that adaptation.
We don't want it to be subjective. No,
and we also don't want that to be their job, right? We want to do their job for them at the beginning when we're delivering this building. Guess what? All the lighting's programmed. You just get to do what you're best at and take care of the residents.
Good plan.
Yeah. So this is an image of a memory care in Oregon. In Oregon, we are actually required by law to use the RP28 guidelines in memory care design. A lot of states just reference it as a good to do, please do, like the FGI guidelines say you should follow these guidelines. Oregon, we're pretty strict about it here, and we say you must. And so this is the entry of a memory care. You can see that I've got a lot of light fixtures in that front door because I'm trying to hit that 100-foot candles. But when you provide all that light, it needs to be comfortable light, right? So my light fixtures here they are tunable. So they can, the intensity can be dimmed up and down, and so can the colors throughout the day. They're fabric wrapped. So they've got an acrylic and a fabric wrap on them that's light colored. So none of the light is being reduced by, say, a dark brown or a black shade. You got to have reflective surfaces, and then it's diffused. So you're not looking at an intense light source. It's scattered around the entire room. We've also got down lights provided, and then there's clear story windows, lots and lots of daylight. And so when the daylight is really nice and bright, those light sources can be dimmed down. So there's that energy savings thing that we talked about.
Sure.
And yeah, so this is really, kind of a great way to design the lobby of a memory care coming in from outside.
Fabulous.
Light distribution on surfaces is also super important to think about. Like all those windows I just showed you in that last picture, you've got to be careful about understanding the angle of the sun, the finishes in the room. If I had a dark floor in that lobby, all of those lights, all of those windows are going to actually create like really weird shadows on the floor in certain times of the day. So I've got a pretty matte floor in there, and I've also got a light colored floor because I don't want to have these scary shadows then disorienting people and making them look like, oh my gosh, there might be a hole in that floor, or I need to jump over that object I'm seeing on the floor.
Or it might be wet. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to think about when you provide all those windows, what are the colors of the surfaces? Do a light study, understand how the sun comes in, and make sure you're not providing some disorientation.
So these are all things that a lighting designer knows. Are there always lighting designers involved in senior living design?
I'm so glad you asked that question because no, there's not. And people often say, I know, because
That's
people think it's important to pay for. It's one of those low-hanging fruit things. And people think that I'm a lighting designer, and I just want to set for the record that I'm not a lighting designer. I'm actually an interior designer that just loves lighting. And there needs to be more of us out there too, because when I'm on a project, I'm providing all of these recommendations. I'm providing, this kind of data to the electrical engineer because most projects, they're going to hire the standard, mechanical, structural, electrical, plumbing engineers, but the engineers are not actually lighting designers most of the time. Some of them do have lighting designers on staff. They provide that as part of their service, but that's an important question to ask because, unfortunately, it's an added cost that some developers just don't understand the importance of, and so they're not asking for it, and maybe their architect and their interior designer's not, strongly recommending it
or budgeting it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You would think that would be a must-have. You don't want to have your building maintenance guy programming the lighting for your seniors. It's just not a good idea.
No. Yeah. And anymore, you really need a low voltage technician on the team as well. Somebody that's very specifically just taking all the systems that have been provided and doing that programming and that, writing those schedules and programming all those schedules for the automation elements of a building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully all our operators of senior living communities who are watching our vodcast are going to understand the importance of a lighting designer.
Yes. Take notes, guys. So contrast, again, we're going to talk about contrast. So there's a lot of places where we add contrast for safety. Like we were talking about those handrails that were hard to see. Would it be better if they were darker? Would it be better if we had some contrast in that corridor? Yes. And you also need to provide a lot more lighting when you provide those darker finishes, those darker wall colors. One thing we do a lot in memory care design is we provide a nice dark accent wall behind the toilet because it helps people with low vision to find their toilet, and that lets them be more independent. But if you had that white toilet that's shown in the upper image there against a white wall,
it's a lot of light.
You can't see that toilet. And so somebody's going to miss it. They're going to be on the floor. That's really dangerous. So one thing we do is we do a darker accent wall behind the toilet, and then also a different color floor finish too, not the same as the toilet or the toilet seat. So you need to make sure that you're ramping up your light levels even more in bathrooms. I like to provide up to 5 light sources in a single user restroom in a resident room. So I like to do one light, like a nice decorative light over the vanity, one light over the sink specifically, because again, in Oregon, I've got really high requirements for that task of washing hands and seeing what's in the sink. And that's the law here, but in certain states, it's just the right thing to do. Right. I like to have one in the shower, and then I like to have one very close to the toilet area. And then I like to have a night light to help people find the toilet at nighttime without turning on the overhead lights.
Absolutely.
A lot of light. And the bathrooms are such important places to have a lot of light, because that is where the highest levels of falls occur for seniors. And so that's one place you do not want to cut back on your lighting when you're doing your value engineering. You do not cut those bathroom lights, please.
I agree.
Yeah. So another example of dining rooms, a lot of people, like to use the candelabra chandeliers with exposed light bulbs. Still no, it's still an important thing to avoid that glare.
Not a glare.
No glare, please. Give them, these diffused light sources are really the best. Maximize daylighting. Work, architect and designer work together, make sure you get as much daylighting in as you can, and then provide a lot of ample lighting around the room as well.
It warms it up too. It makes it cozier.
100%. And light coves. I love light coves. Indirect lighting. It not only adds an element of elegance and sophistication, a nice architectural detail, but really is a very comfortable way to up the intensity of the light in the room and just add a general higher level of light in the space, is to add as much indirect cove lighting as you can afford. Libraries. Everybody tries to convince me libraries are going away, and I'm here to say
going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. I still like to read paper books. Why wouldn't older adults still love it as well? And then just thinking about the tasks of what you're lighting for, you want to make sure that the light sources are placed, right in front of the books, washing down the books, and that anybody standing there looking at the books is not blocking the light source with their own body and then creating a shadow. So, just placing those light sources very carefully so that they wash down the face of the finish, and then figuring out where a person's body is and having it behind the light source.
Thank goodness they don't have those terrible fluorescent lights in libraries anymore. Oh my gosh.
The flicker and the buzz.
So this is a lovely room.
Thank
has
you.
A lot of different kind of light.
A lot of layers of light. Yeah. So layering the light is a really important thing for, again, like building up that overall higher amount of light, maximize daylighting. Have layers of, pendant lights, big chandeliers above that are not seen here. In shelf lighting. It's a really nice thing to do when you're putting beautiful accessories and objects on a shelf, is add the light in there as well, so that somebody can actually enjoy them and see the beautiful objects that you've spent the money and taken the time to curate and place. Entry cove lighting. This is a big one, and this one often falls on the VE chopping block pretty quickly too, because it is unfortunately a little expensive to do it. But I think it's a great way to help residents be independent and feel safe as well. That cove light does a couple of different things. One, it washes down the front door and illuminates the keyhole. So, makes it a lot easier for somebody to get their key, open their door themselves. If there's a peephole in that door and somebody's knocking on the door and you want to look out and see who's standing out there, if their face is in dark, you can't see, it's even scarier, right? So if somebody's face is well washed with light, oh, that's my friend Joan, I'm going to answer the door. It's kind of a no-brainer.
Well, and you think if you're doing all that pretty millwork, do it right. Finalize the step.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we've got these corridors that can just feel abysmal to walk down. These just long corridors with no, usually no windows, and breaking up, having recessed niches, adding a splash of color, and then adding a light source. These entry cove lights are so much more beneficial than a sconce, say, at the door. I like a sconce at the door if possible as well. But if I have to choose between a sconce or a light cove, I'm going to pick the light cove any day.
Sure. And the better lit it is, I think it is less tiring for seniors to walk down those hallways as well.
Yeah.
And energy of the person has to be taken into account as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Want to talk
talking about technology.
This is my favorite thing to talk about. I have been talking about lighting technology for a long time in senior living environments. I'm not sure if this...
Well, that's why we call you a lighting guru.
That's it. I'm not sure if that pop-up showed up on your guys' screen too, but I just had a weird pop-up on my screen.
Oh, nope, no pop-up. We're good.
Okay, good. Technology at its best. Okay, so good. To start talking about technology, the first thing we need to do is talk about the way our bodies have been designed. Our bodies were designed to go to sleep when it was dark and wake up when it's light, right? So I like to play along with the caveman analogy of, coming out of your cave first thing in the morning, you see the sun is just starting to come up and it's a bright, sort of very, very bright blue kind of color of light that we see in the morning, a little bit like this image here. And that tells us, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to get going. Let's go be productive here today. And that light continues to change in color and intensity throughout the day. As the day sort of sets and we've had our dinner and we're washing up and it's time to kind of get sleepy, the sun starts to get lower and lower and the light changes to a warm amber color. Might even see some beautiful red in our sunset. And that cues us, hey, it's time to go to bed now. Light's going away. And that's how our bodies naturally raise in the morning and go to sleep at night. This is how our bodies were engineered, but we all live in these electrical lighting kind of nightmares for some people where that light isn't changing. It's staying the same static color throughout the day, the same static intensity, and it's really bad for our bodies. We're all getting too much light trespassing into our eyelids when we sleep. So we should be sleeping in 100% dark rooms. I personally sleep with a black silk sleep mask every night so that any light getting through my blackout curtains is eliminated. And I think everybody should, because we're not supposed to have any light interruption coming even through our closed eyelids. It actually will disrupt your sleep. But we also don't get enough bright intensity light during the day. And the reason why this is important is because our circadian rhythms are actually tied to this cycle. Our circadian rhythms manage our hormones. Our hormones manage our ability to fight off and not even start and to begin with diseases like depression, diabetes, obesity, cancer. There's studies out there showing that if a resident is recuperating from an illness in a hospital, if they've got a window in their hospital room, they're actually going to heal faster, have improved health outcomes. And we've been talking about that. We just need more light to see properly thing, right? So this is the why. This is the how. This is a very sciencey, kind of geeky little image here, but the only thing you need to really know is you see that sunlight is coming in through our eyes. Hopefully our lenses are taking it in and it's stimulating this little gland in our brain that's called the pineal gland. And that pineal gland is what controls our melatonin production. And if it doesn't get daylight, if it doesn't get light, it doesn't start making melatonin. Unfortunately, most electric light is not strong enough to stimulate the pineal gland. And that's why, going outside for a morning walk is ideal. Take your sunglasses off, take a really high intensity of sun in the day, but not everybody can do that, right? So this is where we start looking at technology and saying, okay, well, how can we get our electric light to sort of start behaving like sunlight and have the same kind of intensity as sunlight and start helping out our melatonin production? Because unfortunately, another bummer here
is that scary slide.
I know. Unfortunately, as we age, our melatonin production just drops off. When we're in our 20s, we're making it left and right. It's no big deal. But as we age, our body just naturally has a harder time producing melatonin. So technology can help us out by intensifying our light sources and controlling some of the important factors that help boost our circadian rhythms.
So everybody doesn't have to just take melatonin capsules. They can actually change their lighting.
Yes.
What a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. Melatonin capsules have their place, and I personally take melatonin at night as well because I think it does help with certain elements of sleep. But we want our bodies to be making melatonin on a 24-hour cycle. That's how they were designed. And we've learned a lot about blue light over the last few years as we're all increasingly dependent on our devices and our phones that are backlit with blue light. We've learned that blue light's really, really bad for you, and it gets a really, really bad rap all the time. And it is bad for you at night. It will actually, So our bodies were designed to not see blue light as after, say, 6 o'clock at night is the timeline I use. And but the bodies were also designed to start melatonin production with the introduction of blue light in the morning. So this is why I always say, don't just block all blue light. Blue light has a place. Yeah, it's supposed to be blue in the morning. It's supposed to be not blue at night. So these are important facts and figures for nighttime. So if you haven't done it already, Phoebe, you want to set that blue light filter, that night light filter on your iPhone and your iPad. And it's a feature for iPhone. It's a feature for Android. It's in the settings. Anybody out there who hasn't done it, please do it. You're going to thank me later. It's going to
maybe that's something we can also add to the website for when people click on the vodcast, is to tell people where to find the blue light setting on both an iPhone and an Android. I think that might be very helpful to everybody.
I love that idea. I could do a little.
Okay, let's make that happen. Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
I think so too. So this is where these amber night lights come in. If you provide a night light in a resident room, which I think you should, because people get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom all the time, and we don't want them flipping on their light switch and turning on that blue light, because there you go, all your melatonin production's now stopped for the night.
Right.
If you get up with an amber light, it does not disrupt your melatonin production. So, just make sure night lights, if either provided under the bed, like this motion sensor one here, or just on the wall in the bathroom, just make sure it's amber. 2700K maximum, 2400K or 2100K if you can find it, is even more ideal. And K, I think most people are probably familiar with what K means, but that's the Kelvin temperature, and that is it's the expression of the temperature of light told in degrees of Kelvin, and that's sort of the language that people use in talking about, well, what color is my light source? Is it a warm light? Is it a cool light? They're talking about it in degrees of Kelvin. And so a warm light source is usually between 2700 degrees for just like a conventional light source. Maybe, 2700 degrees to 3000 degrees would be considered warm by most. And then, anything from 4000 degrees and above would be considered cool by most. All right. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, that it's the timing of when our eyes come in contact with the light source that affects our circadian system. So it's the quantity of light. We need a lot of light in the morning to stimulate our melatonin production, and we need less of it at night and no blue in order to continue that 24-hour cycle. So enter tunable lighting. Tunable lighting is, or circadian lighting, some people call it, is a low voltage controlled system that controls all the light sources in the room. These would be LED light sources. They can be from a number of different manufacturers as long as they all have the same driver type. And so the drivers need to be able to communicate with each other. And that low voltage technician needs to be able to tell the light fixtures to talk to each other in the low voltage cupboard in the back of the building there, so that they can all be adjusted to be different color temperatures and different color outputs throughout the day, so that the technician puts this on a pre-programmed schedule This is a schedule here that's up on screen that was put together by one of my mentors, Eunice Wagner, and her research team. They've done some really cool case studies studying the effectiveness of tunable lighting on people in care settings. And this is the temperature setting and schedule that she recommends. And that is that at 7 a.m., when everybody's waking up, getting ready for their day, the light fixtures come on at 6,500 degrees Kelvin. Bammo, it's great, 100% output. It's blue. It's invigorating. It's going to get you charged up and ready to go have some breakfast and have a great day. And we're going to keep that. We're going to keep that bright, energizing light going all the way till 4 o'clock, which the schedule's changed a little bit. It was, they were dimming it a little bit earlier in the day, and they were finding people were getting sleepy too early. And then that was how
that makes sense.
Yeah. And so there was a bit of a midnight marimba effect happening, is what they called it, where residents were getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning because they'd gone to bed at 5, right?
Sure.
They got sleepy too early. And so keeping the intensity going till 4, and then from 4 to 7, starting to dim that light down to, it's still at 100% output for intensity, but it's now at 4,100 degrees Kelvin. So it's starting to get a little bit less blue, a little bit more neutral in color. And then at 7, the light source gets dimmed way down to 20% output and then warmed way up to 2,700 degrees Kelvin. And then for their night light, they're recommending the 2,400 degrees Kelvin. So as you could see, I'm kind of probably imagine in that analogy of, getting, kind of cozy at that fireside that's amber and red colored. It helps people to get sleepy naturally without sleep medications. It helps people to energize naturally without caffeine, pills, stimulants, and things of that nature. And helps
we still want coffee. Let's be clear.
Yes, it's not. Nobody's suggesting we take.
We're not taking away the coffee.
No. Coffee's fine. But we want to get people off roller coasters of medication that are only designed to kind of stimulate and help people sleep.
So what would you do if somebody wanted to adjust their house? So this is perfect for in community, but given that most people who are in a residential setting don't have that sophisticated electronics, what is kind of the scaled down version that gives you a similar healthy effect?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to do it. So I've gone very grassroots with my efforts here in my own home. And so I have table lamps in my bedroom that are very warm light bulb. And then I have overhead lighting in my bedroom that is at a much cooler temperature. I'm not allowed to turn my overhead lights on in my bedroom after 6 o'clock at night. And I only use my bedside table lamps. So that's kind of my way. I've kind of grassrootsed it together here. There's more sophisticated ways as well. And same in the living room. The lamps are warm. The overhead lights are cool. There are some great light bulbs you can buy from Philips. They're on Amazon. You can control them with apps on your phone. You can put those light bulbs in all of the light fixtures in your house, and you can actually program them through an app on your phone. There are retrofit wall controls that you can put over an existing light switch that have 4 or 5 different programs. It's really easy to program them into your own home, and it's easy to program them into retrofits in resident rooms too. Philips is doing some great stuff with their light bulbs right now, and the apps are very user-friendly and, available for iPhone and Android as well.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and put some links to those options for private residents on the website with this podcast. So, Lisa, you'll share that information with me, and we'll make sure to get that up for people who are not in communities, but are aging in place. I think that's really valuable and something that is easy to do and will help a lot of folks to start that transition to using light to their benefit.
Great idea. I love that. Love sharing that. And I wanted to end on one last, this is, just to finish that up. This is a visual example of a community where we put the tunable lighting in just to sort of show you what does it look like? How dramatic is this visual? Because interior designers are often kind of like, well, what's this going to do to my interior space? Is it going to make everything look nightmarish and strange? And it really doesn't. It's not it's not such a giant shift that it changes the colors of your fabrics drastically, changes your finishes drastically. There is a visual shift in the way that they look. So it's helpful to have, maybe that Philips light bulb or something in your design studio as well. So you can check your finishes and see how they change under their different light sources. But this is the full spectrum of the tunable light schedule that I showed you on the previous slide, shown in an example. So it's not this crazy shift of light.
No, it's not a wild swing. It's just very gradual.
Absolutely. Well,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot. Thank you so much, Lisa. We are constantly talking about lighting in senior living, and there's just not ever enough time or information and sometimes budget. So this presentation, I hope, will help the budget challenged designers who are working in community, as well as the people who are trying to make their aging in place home more conducive to safe, healthy aging in place. And so thank you for all your tips. And again, we will put the valuable tips that have come our way through this podcast on the website with the podcast. So you will be able to see the reference guide as well as how to change your iPhone or Android to blue light at night. We will leave you with some can-do tips and action items so that you can really do this at home. Thanks again. And remember, if you would like to go to the Ageless Living Collaborative website, which is www.agelesslivingcollaborative.org, you will find lots of tips on how to age with grace and hopefully in good health. And we are all about optimizing the lives of seniors. So whether it's lighting or finding the right seat height or the right technology, you're going to find information at our website. And we invite you to join us and get on the bus with Ageless Living Collaborative. We're all going to get there one day. So it'll take a community to make sure that we all get there the right way. Thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you on the next version of Podcast or Vodcast.
Thanks for having me.